When countries get mad at each other, their options are surprisingly limited: angry letters, awkward meetings, or at the extreme, war. But in today's interconnected world, open conflict is a last resort, and most leaders would rather avoid the chaos and destruction that comes with it. That's why the world's favorite tool is sanctions, the international version of grounding a country. Instead of bombs or bullets, it's paperwork, press conferences, and a whole lot of economic pressure. Sanctions are a form of economic warfare. Asset freezes, trade bans, and financial blockades, all designed to squeeze a country until it changes course. It's about making life difficult for governments by hitting them where it hurts, their wallets, and their ability to do business. The idea is simple: cut off money and resources, and force leaders to the negotiating table. By choking off vital supplies and revenue, the hope is to push for change without firing a single shot. But it's not just oligarchs or politicians who feel the pain. Sanctions ripple through entire economies, often hitting ordinary people the hardest. Everyday citizens can find themselves facing shortages, rising prices, and economic uncertainty. It's a sledgehammer, not a scalpel, and the big question is, does it actually work, or does it just cause collateral damage? Sometimes the intended targets are barely touched, while regular people bear the brunt. As we dive into the sanctions on Russia since its 2022 invasion of Ukraine, remember, this isn't a simple good versus evil story. The reality is far more complex, with shifting alliances and unexpected outcomes. It's a tangled web of economics, loopholes, and unintended consequences. Countries find creative ways to get around restrictions, and the effects can spill over into global markets. We'll break down what sanctions are, how they're supposed to work, and whether they've made a real difference, or just made things messier. Because when the world tries to ghost a global power, the fallout isn't just local, it's global. Understanding this is essential to making sense of today's headlines. So buckle up, this is the wild world of financial punishment. Let's get started and see what really happens when a country gets grounded by the world. So, what is an economic sanction, and why do they matter so much in today's world? It's a penalty, essentially a set of rules or restrictions that make it difficult, or sometimes nearly impossible, for a country, company, or even an individual to do business as usual. Imagine a bake sale where one kid breaks the rules and steals a cupcake from the table. The other parents decide to ban him from buying or selling any cookies or treats at the event. That's a simple way to understand a sanction: he's cut off from the action. Sanctions come in three main flavors, each with its own unique impact. First, there are trade sanctions. Countries refuse to buy from or sell goods to the target nation, cutting off vital supplies and markets. For example, no more Russian oil flowing to Europe, and no more Western microchips or technology making their way into Russia. The goal: to starve the target of resources, cash, and the ability to keep their economy running smoothly. Second, we have financial sanctions. These freeze a country's assets or kick its banks out of global payment systems like SWIFT, which is the backbone of international banking. Without access to SWIFT, a country is essentially locked out of the global economy. No international money transfers, no business as usual, and a lot of frustrated companies. Third, there are targeted sanctions. These freeze the assets and ban travel for specific officials, oligarchs, and companies closely tied to the government or its policies. It's like putting the powerful on a global no-fly list and locking up their bank accounts, making it hard for them to enjoy their wealth or move around freely. The idea is to make the people in charge feel the pain personally, hoping they'll change their behavior as a result. Sanctions are designed to pressure, isolate, and punish without firing a single shot or starting a war. But, as we'll see, sanctions aren't always as precise as intended. Sometimes they miss the mark or have unexpected side effects. Sometimes the whole bake sale suffers. Innocent people and businesses can get caught in the crossfire. That's the basics of sanctions. Now let's dive deeper and see why Russia became the world's biggest target. Onward. Why did Russia become the #1 target for global sanctions, drawing the world's economic firepower in a way rarely seen before? It all began on February 24, 2022, when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, shocking the world and upending decades of European stability. This wasn't just a border skirmish or a minor incursion. It was a massive, coordinated assault on a sovereign nation, a blatant violation of international law and the post-Cold War order. The world's response was immediate and unified. Condemnation came swiftly from nearly every corner, but direct military intervention was ruled out. No one wanted to risk igniting World War III. Instead, the West reached for its most powerful non-military weapon, economic sanctions, a financial bazooka aimed straight at Russia's economy. The logic was straightforward. If you can't physically stop the tanks, maybe you can choke off the money that keeps them rolling and disrupt the financial lifeblood of the war effort. Back in 2014, after Russia annexed Crimea, the world's sanctions were relatively mild, a warning shot, more symbolic than truly damaging. But in 2022, the sanctions were on a whole new level, a financial anvil dropped on Russia's economy, designed to cripple its war machine for years, not just months. The goal was clear: isolate Russia from global finance and trade, cut off its access to vital markets, and make the cost of aggression unbearably high. This was a coordinated global effort, unprecedented in scale and scope for a country as large and economically significant as Russia. The message was unmistakable: invade your neighbor, and your economy will pay a steep price, with consequences felt by every citizen. It was a massive gamble by the world's powers. Could economic pain and isolation really stop a war, or would it only harden resolve? Let's take a closer look at what was actually on the sanctions menu and how these measures aimed to change the course of history. The world didn't hold back. It hit Russia with the full buffet of sanctions. First, financial $300 billion of Russia's central bank reserves were frozen, instantly limiting its ability to stabilize its economy. Major Russian banks were cut off from SWIFT, making international business nearly impossible. Next, trade and tech. The EU banned most Russian oil imports, and the G7 capped the price of Russian oil sold elsewhere. The aim: slash Russia's revenue, but keep global prices stable. Then came personal sanctions. Over 1,000 Russian officials and oligarchs had assets frozen and travel banned. The hope was to make the war personal for the elite, hit their wallets, their yachts, their lifestyles. This was about more than just money. It was about isolating Russia's power structure. The sanctions were sweeping, coordinated, and designed to hurt at every level. But did they work as intended? Let's look at who was behind this global effort. The sanctions coalition was broad. The US, EU, UK, Canada, Japan, Australia, and even neutral Switzerland joined in. Their main goal: stop the war by making it too expensive for Russia to continue. By cutting off oil and gas revenue and blocking military tech, they aimed to starve Russia's war machine. Another goal: deter future aggression. The message: invade a neighbor, and your economy gets wrecked. There's also a punitive side: hold Russia's elite accountable, freeze their assets, and ban their luxury lifestyles. The sanctions are both a warning and a punishment. But unity is hard. Sanctions hurt the sanctioners too. Still, the coalition's resolve has held, for now. The question: is the pain enough to change Russia's course? Let's see how much it hurt. Did the sanctions hurt? At first, absolutely. The ruble crashed, the stock market closed, and inflation soared. Russians lined up at ATMs fearing collapse. But Russia fought back. The central bank hiked interest rates, imposed capital controls, and oil prices soared, cushioning the blow. The economy shrank, but not as much as predicted. Growth returned, but it's fueled by war spending, not real prosperity. Russia is now a war economy. Factories make tanks, not toasters. This isn't sustainable. The tech blockade is the slow poison: no Western microchips, software, or spare parts. Airlines can't service planes, energy projects stall, and car production relies on outdated designs and Chinese parts. Russia faces a future of technological stagnation, less modern, less competitive. The sanctions didn't collapse the economy, but they've set it back years. The real pain is long-term isolation, stagnation, and a future built on shaky ground. But Russia didn't just take the hit, it fought back. Let's see how. Russia didn't just accept the pain, it got creative. When Europe stopped buying oil, Russia sold it to China and India at a discount. It built a shadow fleet of old tankers, hiding oil shipments and dodging price caps. Russia also used third countries as middlemen. Goods banned in Russia were bought by companies in Turkey or Kazakhstan, then re-exported. This shell game made it hard for the West to track and stop the flow. Russia pushed made-in-Russia substitutes, but replacing Western tech overnight is tough. China became Russia's economic lifeline, supplying everything from cars to microchips. The yuan replaced the dollar in trade. This partnership let Russia keep its economy and war machine running. Sanctions are tough, but Russia's workarounds are tougher than many expected. So are sanctions actually working? Are sanctions working? It depends on your definition. If the goal was to collapse Russia's economy and end the war fast, then no, they haven't. Critics say sanctions hurt ordinary Russians, push Moscow closer to Beijing, and disrupt global markets. Some argue the West is hurting itself more than Russia, but supporters say sanctions are a long game. They're degrading Russia's economy, draining its resources, and isolating it globally. Every dollar spent dodging sanctions is a dollar not spent on war. The real impact is slow, attrition, not knockout. Sanctions also send a message: invade a neighbor, pay a steep price. They're not perfect, but doing nothing wasn't an option. The world chose economic warfare over real warfare. The results are mixed, but the pressure is real. The story isn't over yet. Sanctions are like a leaky ship. Every time a hole is plugged, another appears. Russia's shadow fleet, third country trade, and complex financial networks all undermine the pressure. Enforcing sanctions is a massive challenge, needing global cooperation and constant vigilance. The rise of a parallel economic system, Russia, China, and other BRICS nations trading outside the Western system, threatens the power of sanctions. If countries can unplug from the West, sanctions lose their bite. The future? More loophole closing, secondary sanctions, and diplomatic wrangling. The coalition must stay united, even as the costs mount. The key question: can the West outlast Russia's ability to absorb pain? Sanctions are now central to global conflict. Russia is the test case. The results are messy, not a silver bullet, but a powerful tool. How this plays out will shape international relations for decades. The stakes are global, and the world is watching.